Okay, welcome to this new little series where I'm going to be chatting with the guys from Pocket Protector, launching lots of cool things, what seems on a pretty regular interval. And I want to bring on a guest, KK from Pocket Protector today, to chat through what the future holds for Pocket Protector, where the differences are in the product, and from the perspective of kind of usability and bringing users on board. What's different about Pocket Protector and how it can assist you in terms of trading, both, from a desktop position, but also from trading on the go, which for a lot of people, especially involving Hyperliquid, is a really important point. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce KK to the conversation, and we'll get down into some discussion on Pocket Protector and everything that KK and team are working on. Hi, KK, are you there?
I am.
Welcome. So I've just done the nice introduction, glowing praise for Pocket Protector and everybody involved, from my experience, of course. So why don't you give everybody out there kind of an introduction to yourself, as opposed to just kind of the mysterious KK as I've introduced you to everybody else.
Sure. And thanks for having me on. So I guess I first stumbled into crypto through Bitcoin many years ago while trying to buy like modafinil from the dark web. So that was, I don't know, 2014, 2013. Around that time, I started a non-crypto company, and then kind of forgot about the space for a couple of years until summer of 2016, um, when Ethereum started getting a lot of buzz, and then obviously summer of 17 when all of the ICO boom happened. So a friend had told me about um, Tezos and 0x and Polkadot and EOS, and so that piqued my interest, and I started participating in like a couple of those ICOs. After I sold my first company, I started a crypto fund with some of the proceeds from those ICOs with that same friend. And we've beaten, Bitcoin, Solana, ETH over the last 7 years, mostly longing liquid tokens. And so then, in 2021, got Solana pilled after gas on ETH was like just super high, and using the chain to like speculate on NFTs was like really slow.
Yeah, I was about to
So
say this is
not doing well.
definitely hints of like NFT summer when you talk about gas fees being like the final straw. Like that's just like NFT summer summarized.
Yeah. I think peak of that was like the other side mint, and it was just like impossible to, like do anything. And so that was, a good time for Solana because it was like this brand new alternative experience that just worked. And obviously, they've made some trade-offs, um, but their like core insight that made a ton of sense was most users don't care about all this like ideological stuff. They just want to like use blockchains in a way that is efficient
Mhm.
and fun and convenient and fast. And so that like made a ton of sense. So yeah, I started, playing with Solana around that time. 2022 rolled around, bear market. That was when I started playing with perps DEXs. So at the time, like all the perps volume, had moved from BitMEX to all the big centralized exchanges. Um, but like during that time, GMX started to get some traction, and
Yep.
like the infrastructure around perps DEXs started getting a lot better. It was slow at first, but then all of a sudden, you could like open trades and you could long, you could short, on a DEX in a non-custodial format with, like not incredible performance. Like if you're a high speed, high frequency trader, like probably, not. But for like a regular trader like myself, like the speed was good enough. So that was kind of like my entree into perps trading, and kind
And
of like
and
perps
just
DEXs.
before I kind of let you carry on, was there like a reason why you preferred the DEX kind of option? Because obviously I know the way that you spoke about GMX, and I think a lot of people will kind of maybe remember that patch of time. I know that GMX kind of was one of those that started to break the mold in terms of the way that exchanges were visualized during that time. Probably from kind of a trading perspective, didn't necessarily do the best job in terms of breaking into the crowd, or like the big herd of traders, although I know a lot of people were very passionate about it. So what was it that kind of was for you like, oh, a DEX, like I like that, and I'm gonna go, like that's where I choose to trade?
Well, I think the biggest one was owning the exchange. So I love that they had a token. And if you owned the token, you essentially owned the right to receive revenues from all the traders on the platform. And they were very transparent about, hey, here's all the money we're making. Here's where that money is going. And most of that money is going to people who held the token. They also had this I think at the time, pretty novel peer to pool order book model, where now like a lot of DEXs have sort of copied versions of that. But
Yeah.
at the time, you could provide the liquidity yourself as just like a non-professional market maker, and they would open up trades. For users would open up trades, and you would kind of take the other side of them. All you'd have to assume is that in the long run, users generally lose money, and I probably am like an EV negative perps trader,
Sure,
even though
sure.
I consider myself a highly positive liquid token investor. So it made sense. Yeah, I would say owning the exchange plus novel order book plus the fact that everything was on chain and transparent. That was really, really appealing as a counter positioning to these centralized exchanges that you got to hack every like couple of years, or like
Sure.
some big exploit, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's trade-off. Like
Yep.
centralized exchanges are much faster, much better, but they're opaque, and sometimes they get hacked,
Yeah.
and you can't own it.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's all like very fair points. And so how did that kind of, enjoyment of the DEX side of things, and kind of, that entry route for some leverage trading, how did that develop into kind of, Pocket Protector and where we are moving to right now?
Yeah, so I mean, it started with like the confluence of perps DEXs, DEX trading, and then the like massive, massive growth of Solana as a chain and as an ecosystem. Even in 2023, after FTX blew up and everyone, all the ETH people were laughing at how, oh, Solana's over, et cetera, et cetera. It was very clear that there was a lot of users who were extremely loyal to the chain. And especially like, I don't know if you remember Bonk, but Bonk launched like right after the FTX blow up. It did this like huge K chart where it like spiked and then kind of went to zero for a while. I bought some Bonk in 2023, mostly on the strength of that community, and then rotated over the course of that year all of my ETH into Sol, and basically did that because I saw the rise of like Telegram bots in 2023 on ETH, and then the first kind of like small wave of memes on Solana. And it kind of clicked during that year that, of course, memes were going to take off on Solana. It's like the cheapest, the fastest. It's they're building for consumers. And then it was around that time I kind of had a conversation with the guy named Shake, who I guess is semi-retired now. But at the time he was, I think he was head of growth at Tensor. And he shared that basically he wished he could ape memes in his group chat. He was like, oh, I wish I could just like, people are sharing alpha. I just want to like click one button, and buy. So that kind of stuck with me. And then around the same time, I was tinkering on product ideas with Epic, who had sold his last company, and kind of playing with Hyperliquid a little bit, like very loosely. And we kind of just got like increasingly confident that meme coins were going to be the next big consumer thing, and really wanted to get exposure to it. So I was like, this is going to be huge. I want to be exposed to it. And so my first step was to buy Unibot. at the time they were like they had kind of taken over taken a big bite out of the ETH bots. They had a huge like first mover advantage in Solana. And I thought the token was like criminally undervalued because all the ETH bots were kind of asleep at the wheel and missing the like Solana meme phenomenon that was just starting to get, starting to grow. So, anyways, I bought the token. 2 days later, it immediately cratered like 50%. So I woke up like,
Classic.
what happened here?
Yep.
Yeah. Turns out, team breakup, Unibot broke up with Unisol. Unisol was like their Solana team. They had some big argument, public feud on Twitter. Unisol split off and became Trojan.
So you're
I'm still
basically
waiting on
saying
that
that
airdrop, by the way.
triggered the full structural collapse of the company by being a buyer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very
Taking
common outcome. Yeah, full structural collapse as soon as I initiate my buy orders. Yeah, it sounds about right, honestly.
Yep. So that's right. So basically I was complaining about this to Epic. And he sort of looked at Unibot, and I think he said something like, "Hey, man, like I could build this in a week. Like, what is this?" So it did take a little bit longer than that, but shortly thereafter, we shipped the group chat Telegram trading bot that essentially Shake had asked for, focused on that single feature, which was a button in your Telegram chat that anybody could click and instantly buy whatever was being talked about. So that was sort of like the beginning of PP, which is like, a group chat bot that you added to your chat and anyone could click ape. And so that kind of like, that spiraled obviously. And we weren't the first to the Telegram bot game. And so we knew we had to do something different. And the thing that we did different was we focused on social. And we focused on trying to be in as many places as possible where you would want to find information and trade quickly. So that was kind of like, I guess that was the prelude to how we got to the initial V1 of the product.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's like a really important note as well, because I think that a lot of people, we see it all the time on Twitter in terms of, people talking about the alpha from group chats and, what the group chat was talking about today. We've got the group chat, the GC meme, that is born and thrives within this community and others. But, I think it's an important one again, and especially in terms of our space. A lot of people share a lot of things in group chats that very easily can be overlooked or not actioned just because there's not a simple step, right? Like, so many people have probably seen contract addresses shared by friends, but don't want to go through the process of having to do something even as simple on the surface as copy and paste it into a search bar. So kind of, just being able to connect the dots very simply is kind of a very powerful tool. And I know was for you guys in terms of kind of getting you on the road on that side of things for Pocket Protector.
Totally. Yeah. And we're standing on the shoulders of, other bots in, for instance, Maestro. Those guys were like definitely, I think they were like among the first.
Yeah.
But we're taking what you just described, which is the convenience benefit of finding information in your chat and immediately being able to execute on that information as far as possible, from just executing in Telegram to Twitter, Medium, Reddit, eventually Substack, etc. Like being able to go from all of these places, take all that information and aggregate and execute across like multiple UIs.
Sure.
So where in the past, you have to find information from like all these places, Reddit, etc., and then like fire up, Binance or fire up some exchange and log in and then trade. I think in the future, at least our belief is that a single integrated experience will win that aggregates across venue, protocol, chain, and then lets you execute on any UI on Telegram, on Twitter, in your app, on Android, iOS, on desktop, etc.
Yep.
And so that's the end state that we're skating to.
And so where are we now in terms of kind of like the evolution of Pocket Protector? You know, kind of like where are we right now? You know, product
Yeah.
wise, vision wise. You know, kind of what does the current look like for us?
Yeah. So today you can trade Solana memes and Hyperliquid perps. Those are the instruments that we've expanded to, and we're looking at being able to provide liquidity and other kind of like on-chain activities. But for now, it's perps and memes in terms of the thing you can trade.
Yep.
And then where you can trade directly in Telegram, directly on X, and directly on your phone through our iOS and Android app. So those are like the things you can trade and the places you can trade them today. So
Yep.
for instance, you could, to kind of like, I guess, put an example on it, you can get a tip in your chat and then immediately buy without having to like navigate to a different exchange.
Mm-hmm.
You could scroll Twitter, see a breaking tweet, immediately open a long without leaving Twitter.
Yeah.
And you can wake up in the morning or you're at the gym and you get an alert on your phone that, oh, like your friend just flipped from short to long, or a top trader you're following just dumped a lot of their tokens, or like 5 people who you really trust are all longing with like high amounts of leverage,
Yeah.
and you can instantly execute from that alert on your phone.
Okay, so basically, you know, kind of the discussions we were having, you know, a couple of minutes ago around kind of that seamless, you know, irrespective of app, irrespective of platform, you know, being able to essentially execute on a trade, an idea, piece of information, breaking news article, kind of that from a Pocket Protector perspective is now already in play.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
we're only going to extend that further into the future. So, going to other platforms, other UIs that you might source information from that you'd want to execute very quickly. And then other instruments that you might want to trade. So any sort of token or on-chain asset that you can conceive of, we will eventually support.
Yeah. So I guess that's like, you know, one of the things that I wanted to ask you anyway was kind of around what does expansion look like? You know, is it a case of, I guess when you know, we consider Pocket Protector aims, okay, you know, kind of from a business perspective. Like I know right now when, you know, we're talking about things like Hyperliquid perps, and we're talking about, you know, the potential for expansion into other platforms, you know, and the ability to execute from anywhere at any time. Kind of where do you see the kind of like the core expansion? Do you see it as kind of an upscaling of a perps product? Do you see it as the rollout to other platforms, or is it simply a case of kind of trying to manage both of them in unison, you know, to both you know, essentially rise together?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sequencing is important. So it's always kind of this pendulum swing between going wider versus going deeper.
Hmm.
I think the last couple of weeks we've been going wider. So obviously integrating Hyperliquid, integrating perps, moving from just Telegram to now Telegram plus mobile.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of a platform expansion, going wide across, interfaces and UIs. I think what we'll do next is swing back a little bit to product and going deeper. So
Hmm.
like one of our most popular features, for example, on the meme side is copy trading, and we've recently extended that to perps. This is a feature that is exactly what it sounds like. You have a friend who you think is a good trader, um, but you can't be bothered, or you don't have time to kind of like follow their trades manually and try to like copy them. Well, with copy trade, you can basically set an automatic copy trade where you will exactly mirror everything they do. On the meme side, you proportionally buy. On the perp side, you open and close positions with like same leverage. So we size all of that correctly so the tracking error is reduced. And so you can basically copy people while you sleep. Um, and so that's like an example of kind of like a user enablement feature
Yeah.
that a lot of our users have asked for.
Yeah. I
Other
think
kind of
that's
like features a lot. Go for it.
There's a really important one, you know, because obviously with my partnership with Woo, I know that was like an incredibly successful feature in terms of both what community wanted, um, but
Yeah.
also when following the right people is also very lucrative for individuals as well. Um, you know, and so the
That's right.
same situation applies here. You know, when you have the ability to essentially perfectly mirror somebody's actions, and it's not a case of, you know, having to be online at the same time, or, you know, and in a lot of
Right.
these markets there's also liquidity conditions because, you know, larger accounts can post something and before you even get a chance to log into your exchange, price is up 7-8%.
Yeah.
So, you know, being a part of this kind of an initiation, I think is, you know, again, a big benefit for people.
Yeah. I definitely agree. And it's not just setting it up automatically to copy trade, but it's kind of the whole suite of, maybe you don't want it to be automatic. If you don't, that's okay, because we
Mhm.
will let you see very in a very detailed way, like which of your friends are long or short. Like in your example, if you're following a whale, maybe you're not ready to like automatically mirror them yet. But you want to see how they trade and get some signals from them, get some alerts from them before you decide to, put your capital behind this person. That's also something you can do
So a level
with
of
pocket.
customization within essentially the copy trading function.
That's right, both on an individual level and also kind of like on a network level. So you
Yeah.
can kind of go into people's profiles and see how they perform. You can, as you said, like get alerts or custom notifications when they trade, so you can kind of get a feel for their style. Like, oh, are they like a small cap person or the large cap person?
Yeah.
Do they trade only majors or do they kind of trade tail assets, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
And then on kind of like the friend network side, you can get a detailed view of like who's long and who's short, which is useful because I'm often, curious, like people when sentiment flips, it's often a time for me not to like go in or chase, but to
Yeah.
counter trade.
Yeah.
So if I
Sure.
can see that, like most of my network is super long, but I have an insight that there's going to be some sort of like either bear catalyst or like a sell the news event, like Trump, SBR, et cetera, then that would be an input into like my own, trading workflow that,
Yeah.
okay, great. Like 90% of my network is, between 10 and, 30x long majors. Like maybe this is getting overextended and I should actually sell.
And it's a very interesting point actually on the back of what I have been. I recorded a video last night, and what the discussion point of the video was, what factors outside of technical analysis do people use to make decisions? And like a lot of the things that people have quoted, you know, in their responses to that have been things like, you know, general sentiment. And
Yeah.
you know, especially at kind of, you know, those depression and euphoria moments of market cycles where we see, you know, very heavily emotional buying or selling, um, and sometimes, you know, even just utilizing Pocket Protector to give you a very quick sentiment analysis can be very helpful, especially in those times where you kind of maybe want to sense check yourself, you know, when you know that you've just been pounding the green button for 3 weeks and everything feels too good to be true. You know, to be able to get that gauge for sentiment analysis and thought process again, I think is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And we hope to have, a very, very strong sentiment gauge that's powered by various like circles of your network, from your friends to people in your group chats to specific group chats that you think are very high signal, whether it's, I guess, positive or negative signal. So that sentiment gauge is extremely useful for kind of your overall, I guess, signals like book or signals compilation.
Yeah. Okay, so you kind of, you know, we've talked quite a bit about, you know, the evolution and kind of where you've come from. ideas, kind of seeing those ideas through to reality, and then the development of kind of where we are today, along with, kind of future looking plans in terms of the development side. So kind of what's your message kind of to people today, kind of, and I'm not really expecting you to do kind of, the elevator pitch, but what's the call to people today? What would you like to see people do and action? And of course, given where we are in terms of development as well, that could be a case of, signing up for access. That could be a case of, wanting people, on board now, ready to go, but what is it that you kind of want to call out to people from where we are today?
I think the biggest thing is we have a lot of very powerful features that will make it into our iOS app that is currently in private beta. And I would say that that is hopefully going to improve everybody's trading workflow by 10x. And you can sign up for it. We just launched the waitlist for it yesterday. And we're very, very focused on listening to people who are traders, and very glad to include people in that private beta to make it super powerful. And so I think, yeah, we're very, very excited about that product. And we would love to include folks in that beta to iterate with us.
And I can absolutely vouch for KK's love of feedback, by the fact that we have regular calls together. And one thing that I have promised KK, and I'll let you into the kind of the internal discussions. One thing that I've promised KK is a feedback group. And it's one thing that I haven't delivered for KK. And it's one thing that KK continues to ask me for on a very regular basis. And so I know that this is a man who values feedback. So I think, yeah, from that perspective, if people can sign up and kind of get on board, obviously follow along on Twitter as well is where you're going to be able to get up to date information. But also, I guess the other thing, KK, and please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there are still now avenues ready for people to kind of be involved in the Pocket Protector ecosystem. Right. So it isn't just a case of those guys having to, sign up and then wait. There are opportunities now to come directly into the ecosystem, to use products, and to once again provide feedback and thoughts around that.
That's 100% right. DM at Pocket Protector Bot on Telegram, and you can trade memes and perps, copy trade, view friends, etc. today, live in production, and drop into our community chat on Telegram. We're like extremely responsive there, and we will also be prioritizing folks for the app based on like usage in our bot. So there's absolutely ways to get involved, to dip your toes into the ecosystem, and we're here. Like Schiller said, we're very we're hungry for feedback, and love listening to people. And so yeah, come on in.
Okay, perfect. Well, I was gonna finish off by saying, is there anything else that you want to add? But that feels as though you've given a nice summary and call to action for everybody at the end of the discussion today. Is there anything else you want to add, or are you happy that was a nice sign off from your side?
No, I think that's all. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So thank you, KK. Very much appreciate you joining today and discussing through everything with me. And obviously, I'm aware of a lot of this information anyway, but I think it's really good for the audience to be able to hear this, to know that it exists, to understand that there is a usable product out there already that satisfies maybe some of the pinch points that you already have with, trading at some of these locations, discussion in some of the group chats. An ability to be able to action on things with increased pace, urgency, and ability to be able to better time and execute the market as well. So those tools do exist with Pocket Protector, and then obviously there's a huge range of developments and additions to that are in the works. So like KK said, make sure that you sign up at the relevant venues and make sure that you hop into the TG as well to make sure that, again, community feedback side, we can improve, expand, and, work on the product to make sure that it fits the needs of everybody out there. So a big thank you once again, KK, and more to come very soon.